Man, well, I'm so super stoked to be here, and I'm absolutely I can't be any more happy to have my administrator with me. Dr. Tara Cooper is an absolute rock star, and she supports social emotional learning in students and adults. So I'm Tom Whisinnard. I've taught for 20 years, all in Millard, it's a third largest school district in the state of Nebraska. Um, I've taught fourth grade, I've taught fifth grade. I dabbled in administration for a little bit, but the classroom is for sure the right fit for me. So I went back to the classroom. Um, and everybody got a pandemic pet, or a lot of people did, and my family decided to be the same. We got a pandemic pet. We got two of them. They're chinchillas. So we have chinchillas in Nebraska. Nibbles and Oreo are with us at our house. So that's a little bit about me. Tara?
Hi, I have also been in education for 20 years. I was a third grade teacher prior to delving into administrative work. And I don't have any fun chinchilla stories. I did not get any pets over COVID. But I do think just to kind of like make a connection with your COVID piece, my kids and I were talking the other day about how we haven't really done a puzzle since COVID. So that was our COVID thing, was a whole lot of puzzles.
It seems like everybody has a COVID story, something they
Yep.
adapted or got back to. Um, and so it's super, super wild to be here. We started this um, social emotional journey. I don't know, what was it, about 16 years ago, together. Tara was working at the school that I was working at, and something just just seemed like made sense. But we're going to get into a little he said, she said here, about social emotional learning and what it looks like at a building level. What brought our building, I think, to kind of the forefront of at least schools in the state of Nebraska with social emotional learning, and how maybe we can get some community buy-in. So, um, I our journey started about, like I said, 16 years ago. And I was sitting on the couch thinking that there has to be some kind of connection to like what good teaching is. What do good teachers do day in, day out? Um, I mean, by all means, somebody should have probably come up with a curriculum or a box or something that would be really easy for teachers to implement, that would really kind of get to the root of what good teaching is. And of all people, my mom found this curriculum, Harmony, and I swear to you that all good things in life, Tom, start with moms. A lot of them really do, and so this is no different. She told me about Harmony, and about 16 years ago, it was just coming out. So I made a few phone calls, and one of them was to Tara, and I said, um, "What do you think? Could I? This is what I'm thinking. I would love to explore this a little bit more." And she was on board. Like a great school administrator, she said, "Yeah, go ahead." She empowered me to make that decision and pursue it a little bit, and I did. And the next thing you know, we had some training going on. I was able to implement it in my classroom, and I think it was successful because then we did have the building level trainings, and then we had some other things happen. But Tara, what's your point of view on how it kind of came into our first school?
Yeah. So relationship building, the idea of that, building a classroom community, that's not anything new. But I like what Tom said around teachers, like, is there like something that we can go to so we're not all recreating the wheel, and teachers kind of wondering what that thing would be. And so when Tom asked about that, it wasn't this like too crazy of an idea, because yeah, building relationships with kids is important, and doing that intentionally, like that sounds like a great idea. And he had found the resources, and so we have procedures in districts, I'm sure all of you do, to make sure, can we use different materials and things, and so they said yes. And so we started really small, with Tom using it in his class. And then we actually were able to build it across our building, spread it across the district, became written into district curriculum guides and things for all teachers to use. And so again, it wasn't some like brand new crazy idea, but it was the idea of finding something that's a good resource for consistency, for teachers to be able to go to, just like they can go to a reading curriculum or a math curriculum. And I really, truly have always believed that it's our job to teach behavior skills, and those life skills just as intrusively and just as explicitly as we teach reading and writing and math. And that's become even more and more important coming off of COVID and getting back into schools and things. And so we were really fortunate to have already had some of these systems in place for all school classroom-wide morning meetings and using different curriculum.
Yeah, I don't think you can understate this enough. I think as a practitioner, as an educator, as a classroom educator, the having the administrative support when I'm trying to bring or we're trying to bring social emotional learning into our building, into our classrooms, can't be the importance can't be overstated. We need that administrative support, and we need administrators to really champion that. And I've heard a couple here today that were just absolute rock stars when it comes to setting like guidelines and empowering students and empowering staff members. I don't think that enough can be said about how important that is. So the next step, um, implementing social emotional, I think, curriculum across a building level at least, you have to be really intentional. And I've heard another couple speakers say this as well. Um, we were really purposeful in scheduling. When do you allow teachers to really dive into social emotional learning? Yeah, it happens all day, every day. Yes, it happens in math. Yes, it happens in reading. Yes, it happens in social studies and science and all the other curricular areas. But if we are, like Tara said, going to be explicit and intrusive with the instruction of these skills, do we build in the time? Do we believe that it deserves the time to have its own slot? And again, to Tara's credit, she thought, yeah, it does. And there are a lot of curriculums out there. There's a lot of different names for this: buddy up, meet up, morning meetings, right? There's closing circles. There's all of these names, but we need to be intentional. So one thing that we did was create a time slot for it. Here is our social emotional learning time. Here is our morning meeting learning time. And like Tara said, the district kind of gave us, I think, the tools to put this into our building schedule, because they said it is important enough that we give you the freedom, we give you the time to do this. How hard was it to get this in our building level, Tara?
Yeah, I think the biggest struggle creating any schedule, is finding time for all the things, because everything that we do is so important. We have recommendations of time guidelines for different content areas and curricular areas. We build schedules like the one that's shown where, every 15 minutes something is happening. However, we don't teleport. We have transitions in between all of those things. Those take up time. And so to find time carved out specifically for morning meeting and intentional social emotional development, it could have fallen in a lot of different places, and it was new to us, and so it didn't feel like me being the one to say like, this is the time, then we're all going to do this, would have created buy-in or would have gotten people on board. And so we actually created a team, because we kind of we have site plans in our district where we think through, we look at data and decide what we need to be able to focus on for the next 6 years. And social emotional learning, we ended up writing it in our plan. And so that team that was in charge of actioning it, we kind of talked through different scenarios of where that time could fit. And so the sample schedule that we have up here now is our current building schedule, and it has everyone doing morning meeting at the same time, very first thing in the morning. But when we very first rolled it out, Tom and I were actually working together in a different school. And we were struggling to figure out, like, we're not taking anything away. We're not taking anything off of the plate. So where does that time come from? And so we did it different ways, different years. There was one of the first years where every grade level picked their own time. And so for fourth grade, you might say, this is a natural 20 minutes in our day where we're going to set that aside and we're going to do it. But kindergarten is going to do it at this time because that's what works in their schedule. And we did that at one point. Then another year, we had decided that we wanted it to be at the beginning of the day to really get everybody like started off on the same page. But we were a school of 600 kids, and we didn't really have a half an hour block to give up in the day where we weren't running specials, because then that created other scheduling issues. And so we ended up having that there was a class that had to go to specials very first thing. So then their morning meeting time was different than the rest of the building, but it was still blocked out as their first thing they did when they came back from specials, right after the start of the school day. And then the way we have it built in currently is it works in our schedule to do it as our very first thing, building wide. I think I mention all those different things because there's not a one size fits all. There's not one way that it works. You got to do it how it works for you and for your building. And that's going to look different with buildings of different size, different special programs, all of that. And also where you're at in your social emotional learning journey of what's going to make sense for your teachers. I think we would have been off the mark if we would have said, Tara and Tom think the social emotional time is really important, so you're all going to do it at 12 o'clock every day. We would have lost people before we even got started if we would have approached it like that. And so I think, depending on where you're at and seeing what the people want to do. And that's the other thing, as an administrator, like, I'm not the one actually doing it. It's not my schedule. I'm doing my best to stay out of my office and be in classrooms, like was said earlier. But I'm not the one who has to live it every day. If we're doing our morning meeting from 8:40 to 9 o'clock, or if we're doing closing circle from 3 to 3:30, teachers have to live it. And so teachers have to have some buy-in and ownership in that. And it's great when you have a teacher leader like Tom, who is able to share the research and the why behind what we're doing with teachers, to get them excited about it, to get them to find, okay, what time of day is going to work for us. And then that's the part that then becomes a non-negotiable. We can figure out, we're all going to do it, decide when we're going to do it. Okay, now that part is set. And then you build from there and you learn to use the resources that you have. And I would also say that that's like at a bare minimum. You know what I mean? Because what you have built in is this specific set aside time. But the more confident teachers get in being intentional about teaching social emotional learning, the easier it is for them to weave it into everything they're doing, into teachable moments. There's a ton that does crosses social studies curriculum in K2 for us, at least, and some social studies connections and health, both.
Another thing I think we did at our school that I think was super meaningful was that having this scheduled time, there's always going to be holdouts. There's always going to be people that don't see the power in social emotional learning. There's always going to be naysayers. But this really kind of forces them to become empowered. It forces them to become owners of this time. And so that helps some of the naysayers. Another thing that we did was we started putting together frameworks of what social emotional lessons could look like. I think what Tara said is true. It's not a one size fits all. Having this time guarantees me the time as a teacher to address any issues I have in my classroom, while John or Cynthia down the hallway may be addressing a different issue in their classroom using a different curriculum or a different social emotional platform. So I think having this time to address behaviors or expectations or self-care for children or whatever the case may be really is a win-win situation for everybody involved.
To piggyback on that, I'm going to give an authentic example of the beauty of having this schedule. Was just last week, student in Tom's class struggling with meeting expectations for the lunchroom supervisor. And it was getting increasingly bigger and bigger and bigger each day. And so we're like, hey, and it wasn't just him. There were a couple other students as well. If I would happen to walk in the hallway, I'm going to redirect, but it was becoming a pattern. And so we powwowed. And so the lunch supervision person then was going to can go into morning meeting that next day, and can talk with the class, reset expectations, partner with the teacher. All adults are in charge. All adults are working together. You're not just, doing what you're supposed to be doing when Mr. Wiz is here, but for all adults in the building, because we all care about you. We all want you to be successful. And being able to have that time built right in. We didn't have to, scramble to try to find something where that would work. We had a problem and we had a time where we could problem solve and make a solution with the kid, with the class. Within that sense of community of then holding each other able to meet expectations because we're all a classroom community.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful, building that community, and that goes right into the next little bit is the community buy-in. I found it so amazing with the previous speaker that if you have the right resources, if you have the right message, if you have the right things to share, people come find you. And I love that she addressed pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic during pandemic, because I think that we really, if nothing else, learned a ton about the need for social emotional learning through the pandemic. So in 2016, when we started this journey, I didn't know what a pandemic was. I never know that there'd been a pandemic before. And so 2016 came and went, 2017 came and went. And we were on this great journey. Um, and then the pandemic hit. And how do you get kids to buy in? How do you continue social emotional learning? How do you get kids to want to learn academics when they're stuck at home? Um, and one thing that really stuck out to me is social emotional learning at its core is based on human relationships. And I don't care if there's another pandemic. I don't think anybody can ever sway me from that. So one thing I did was I made the time to get online with students every day, maybe 3 or 4 students every day, just because that social connection needed to be made. Um, and these social emotional skills still needed to be practiced. Um, and that was really, really important. And so when kids came back and adults came back, and even in the waning months of the pandemic, it was really clear that something had to change, that the months stuck indoors, the months stuck away from people other than our nuclear family units was really, really tough on people. And so one thing we did was we hosted a family night that really delved into social emotional learning for both parents and adults and children. We looked at the work of Mark Brackett and his book Permission to Feel, and we dove into some harmony game cards that families could use to practice the social emotional skills of listening and taking turns and being okay if your voice wasn't heard, and things like that. And families, I think, were like they loved it. They wanted more of it. And I think Tara can talk to more about this, but it came from the community. They wanted resources. They wanted things tangible that they could take home. And so when the other speaker said, people know the power of social emotional learning, yes, and they want it. And we have these amazing resources to share with the world. What was that like to have that pandemic, Tara, and have people kind of search out resources from the school?
Well, it was tricky because there was no playbook for a lot of the questions that parents were asking and resources that people were looking for. And our parent group, like our PTO group, every year we would have some sort of a family education night. And it was always just kind of dependent on, what was big at the time. And so one year families were like, social media, we need more information around the dangers of social media and how our kids are hiding it or what we need to know. And so coming off of pandemic, parents were talking about like they're just not really sure how their kids are doing and things just feel different around kids' mental health and how to help and support that. And so, like Tom had said, we had a family night where we had like um, some like engaging activities for families to do together, like those cards. But then we also had like a parent presentation night, which we videoed and were able to share out as well, because we always know not everybody can always come. But Wiz talked about it, and then our school counselor and our school psychologist, and they went through like basically as a school, here's the things that we're doing to support social emotional learning. Here's things you can do at home, and then here's other resources if you feel like you need more than what we're offering you now. And it was I feel like I got the most feedback from parents of it feeling really authentic and timely in what people needed. And I think part of that connection that opened that up for it being so powerful was what Tom was talking about with we Zoomed, and we had certain times a day we would Zoom through our district during the pandemic, and that morning meeting time, or like at some point where you're doing some sort of community building and checking in, and maybe you're showing your cat one day and the next day it's everyone tell what you had for breakfast, or like little things like that so people could still feel connected. Parents did get a little bit of a glimpse into some of those things that we do at school, because they were at some point in time, they were either hearing the Zoom or they were in the next room trying to work, but they had a little bit of a glimpse into it. And then we were able to then, as parents were kind of asking for more, give them more explicit direction on what it looks like at school, talking through like it's not difficult stuff. It's not like we're doing anything that you might not be able to think of on your own, or that there aren't resources out there for, but it's that intentionality around it. Like, can you talk about these cards at your dinner table? Or, you're spending a lot of time driving the car back and forth from practices if you're anything like me. And so what are some of those intentional, conversation starters that you can have with your kids to get into more than just, how was your day? Fine. What did you do today? Nothing. And so parents really did enjoy that. And I would say it was one of the best PDs that we had done for parents. But like I said, it was counselor, school psychologist, and then Tom as the classroom teacher.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I mean, I hope we never go through another pandemic like that, but it is nice to know that we have some tools, right? Um, One other thing I want to say is, partnering with families, partnering with adults is really important. Just because, yes, we practice the skills of success. Yes, we practice what it looks like to be successful in an academic setting. Giving our community the tools to continue those conversations and really bust out of the four walls of our school is, I think, paramount if we really want our kids and other humans to reach their full potential. Um, and I get it. I'm tired as a parent. When I get home, I'm tired. I don't, it's difficult to really be engaging sometimes, but having these resources is really great. And one of the resources that I love, it's on my phone right now, is Harmony Game Room. It's an app, and it absolutely just, you flip through the cards and you have the questions there, and it's not a brain drain to come up with things. And there's other games and activities. There's a calming room that's absolutely fantastic. Um, So those are just some resources that I think sharing with your community would definitely go a long way for furthering the message of social emotional learning. Um, so thank you for being here. This has been absolutely amazing to share the story that Tara and I have kind of had over the last couple of years. Um, Here's some final takeaways that hopefully that you can reflect on as the day goes on and maybe tomorrow. Um, this social emotional implementation is a journey. It's not going to be a quick thing. It's not going to be a one day and we're done. Let's use this curriculum. Let's use this app. It is a journey. It takes time. It takes intentionality. Um, Start small. Find those pockets of positivity in your school, your district. Find those people that are like-minded like you, and go with it. Let them run. Um, and be supportive of them. And then the last thing is enjoy the journey. Find those celebrations. Find those students who are thriving because of your change of instruction, because of your ability to focus and reflect and maybe implement something new that changes their lives, that changes the whole trajectory of their being. So thank you again for having us. This has been absolutely amazing. Um, it does. It takes time. And Tara and I, like I said, we've been at it since 2016, and we're continuing that journey. Um, but hopefully, we gave you a little insight on what maybe setting up a building for success might look like.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, wow, again, what three great mini sessions. Tom, I'm getting all these. Can I have his email address so we can recruit him to teach in my district type emails as well? So watch all those recruiting.
No.
Sorry, Tara, you might lose on that. Appreciate you. I have one question for you, and then I'm actually going to call an audible because we are going to get you out of here at 2:00 Eastern. We promise y'all. We always want to respect everybody's time, but we're going to do a quick idea share, 30 seconds or less type thing. I have one question for you, just on recommendations. Obviously, as we have changes each year, new staff are hired, right? Over time, how many times did we hear the word intentional today? How are we intentional, or how are you all intentional with new staff as they come in, new teacher academies, those kinds of things, to help understand the culture of SEL and the way that it is integrated daily? What, just a couple tips, or what might that look like?
Tara, I don't know. I think having somebody that is really passionate about it on each grade level team or in the building, somebody who's really passionate about it, and having those again intentional, right? Like that's the whole thing is we can't let social emotional learning just happen because it might not. It might, but it probably won't. So having those intentional conversations with new staff members, hey, here's the curriculum, here's the framework, here's the time of day. Um, and then, as an administrator, I think sharing that with other people. Hey, come in and watch. Come in and watch my morning meeting. Hey, you're new. Come in and watch how we discuss behaviors. Tara?
Yeah, I think if there's one thing I have definitely learned about the transition of getting new staff in is sometimes as an administrator, you think, well, they go to a bunch of training days at the beginning of the school year for the district. So they learn the things they need to know there. And their team's going to tell them all the other things we do. But we do a lot of things. And not all of the things that I think are important or that I think should be shared maybe come up. And so the system that we've kind of used is what Tom was just saying is when we have different priorities in the building or whatever our focus areas are, there's somebody like, so let's say it's a team of 4. One person is that person who like social emotional learning and behavior is their thing. Maybe we got new reading curriculum. So somebody's going to be the person that's going to focus on that, so that there's an expert in each of the focus areas on each team. And then instead of always meeting with like whole staff to talk about things, sometimes I might pull with just social emotional leads or whoever it is to do a check-in or make sure that they have what they need. And I'm giving that example from the school that we were at previously. Tom and I are new at a school this year, and we've been getting some morning meeting things going. And so we have a social emotional learning team. We just met with them a couple weeks ago. hey, we had made morning meeting slides for everybody for the first quarter. Now that first quarter's over, now what? Do you want us to keep giving you resources? Are you at a spot where you're ready as a team to differentiate them and change them to the skills or the behaviors and things that you're seeing that you want to work on? Getting some feedback from that team to then roll out with everyone. Again, finding those people, like Wiz said, that are passionate about it, that want to serve on that team. And I will also say, as a district, we have been pretty lucky because responsive classroom training has been something that every summer, every building's gotten to send a few people to. And so we've been able to build that up. And then those teachers that have gone and been tend to be the ones who then choose to be that grade level representative and want to prepare and plan for the PD. They're the ones who put together all the resources for teachers to get rolling this year. So finding those people who have that passion and then leaning into it for sure.